Human trafficking, sexual exploitation, domestic violence, abuse in general. There's so much lately that I'm hearing about and we're talking about out in the public privately as well. But in my opinion, here at the Warriors, something that is sorely missing is what needs to happen on a larger scale to really make a difference. Not that groups and organizations, nonprofits, even government, we talk among ourselves. We have to get this information, in my opinion, out more to the public. Let people recognize and know what's going on. There is help and how to go about it because it is very overwhelming. So I've never been trafficked. I feel very fortunate about that. But we need to listen to one thing I've come to the conclusion over the past 5 years. We need to listen to survivors. We need to support survivors. And we need to build them in leadership roles in order to get the information out there and let other, perhaps victims, survivors, people who don't even recognize this is happening to them, this abuse, let them know there is help and there are places to go or people to talk to. So, with that, I want to say it is such a complete honor to share the voice and expertise of Jessica Muñoz. Jessica says that survivor leadership is essentially valuing lived experience. I'm also picking up on lived experience of gender-based violence is cultural expertise. We're going to get into all of that. We have so much to discuss. And Jessica is a psychotherapist, a licensed mental health counselor, a gender-based violence expert, researcher, and survivor leader with New York-based Sanctuary for Families. That's just a drop in the bucket for everything Jessica does. Let's get on with the discussion. Please follow. I'm going to point out Sanctuary for Families, sanctuaryforfamilies.org, based right here in New York. And also, Jessica's going to fill us in about her social media because I'm urging her to get back on that Twitter, which is now called X, with her J. Muñoz Psychotherapy. She's on Instagram. That's where we see each other and share stories. Jessica, welcome to the Warriors.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'd like to add on that when I introduce myself, I say that I'm a survivor first. So I'm a survivor of sexual assault in the setting of intimate partner violence. It's really important for me as a visible survivor to make that clear. I am somewhat atypical in that I'm ready to do that publicly, but also in addition to these professional credentials I have, it's kind of atypical to be a visible survivor and to be doing clinical work and to label yourself as a survivor first. So thank you for that introduction. I wanted to make that clear as soon as we got started.
I like that right at the top. And you know what? I'm going to thank you again. I'll be thanking you a lot because the fact that you bravely want to share what happened to you, your life, and also your work. How did you find, first of all, how did you find, I was watching your speech lately that you made, the Zero Tolerance Sanctuary for Families, their gala recently. Let me just start with, how do you find the strength to do, I'm very serious, because we always have to remember, we have to take care of ourselves first in order to do better, whether it's with our families, ourselves, our community. What do you do? Do you want to share anything about yourself with that, in that aspect?
Well, first of all, right now I'm in a more privileged position. I have a great support system in my life. So that really comes first. I'm a mother. I have a teenager and someone who's about to go in kindergarten, my daughter. So, I have the support that allows me to step into these social circles and make social connections. And it's really the social connections is how I find the strength. Stepping into this together and showing up together. I'm with Sanctuary for Families. We're the leading service provider working to end gender-based violence nationally, and we actually believe probably internationally too, providing legal services and clinical services and stepping into the advocacy space together with other advocates, with friends I've made along the way. That's really honestly how I find the strength. Being a survivor is such a lonely experience when you're going through the fire. And it's ironic when you come out of it is when you find that group that you really needed way back when. So that's really my strength.
I
It's a
like
great.
that. And also, this is just me, and I hear this from a lot of women, moms strengthens them. Like, you want to try to do it for the kids, also be a role model for the kids, or at least think about like, okay, I have kids. I have to think about them, or I don't want this for my children type of thing. I hear that a lot out of women and our teen
Um,
girls. Do you hear that?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a teenage son and then my daughter who's a little one. But, for me, um, I want to spread the message and work on prevention, not just putting out fires. And that is where I align that with when I look at, my daughter. Patriarchy, for example, is, it's not the direct cause of of gender-based violence, but it's the feeding ground. And so it's the little things that we do in this advocacy work too that matters, spreading awareness in workplaces, minding how we talk about these themes, minding how we talk about gender at work. This is where it starts,
Yeah.
it's important to me.
No, but I'm glad you said that because I'm also finding everybody kind of reacts for the most part. I don't want to say everybody, but there's like always reaction where we really have to get in there with people, girls, boys, and intervene and teach a different way. So we're not, as you say, putting out the fires. Of course, we have to put out fires, but we have to prevent new victims and prevent this way of thinking. And that's where I find there's kind of a link missing. We have to get in, and it seems like younger and younger, age appropriate. We have to really teach about things in this world we live in. This is just what it is. So we have to roll with it. We don't have any other place. This is it, right? So we have to find better ways to talk to the kids open and honestly and make it resonate and happen so we don't have what's been going on. I want to ask you, for those listening, um, describe what is your definition of gender-based violence? And I ask you this because I had posted something the other day and two people wrote to me and they're like, now again, we have, the internet, you can look things up. And anyway, they wrote to me and they're like, I don't understand when you talk about this gender-based violence. What is that? What is this gender-based you're talking about? So explain a little bit about this to us.
Yeah, it's really just it's an umbrella term for several forms of violence, and I will list them. So, domestic violence or intimate partner violence is one. Human trafficking is another. Sexual violence, sexual assault of any type, sexual abuse as well. So, there's so many ways that we can be. As humans violated, and it's usually linked back to coercive control is the common thread that threads all of those together, in my opinion. There's usually that behind us. That's it, the easiest way to explain it. It has nothing to do with so much gender identities in there, but on a surface level you might think we're going there. No, it's really, it's an umbrella term for different forms of violence.
Yeah, I think that's where the confusion is with the word gender. Now everybody's thinking it's something else when it's not
Yeah,
really that.
no, I
I think we
forgot
need a new
to.
term. I think we need a new
Yeah,
something.
but there's two important ones that I forgot to list in there too is psychological abuse, I like to say, and emotional abuse. Yes, they come under all of those other forms of violence that I listed, but they can be some of the most damaging ones. Sometimes, on the internet we have people going around calling it narcissistic abuse. I'm not as keen on that one sometimes because that is linked to the name of a personality disorder. The real link is the coercive control. But the psychological and the emotional can be the most damaging. And I think that's the one that confuses people. And then that's often where things start, where the sexual violence starts, where the human trafficking can start.
I think that's one of the toughest things we do at the Warriors. I will have the reaction because remember what you know, what I know, most people really don't know. They're not focused on it like we are. So I always try to break things down very simple to raise awareness, take action, simple. I've had more women say to me, I don't understand. Why doesn't she just run away? Get out. And I'm like, you don't understand. All somebody can think about is survival. or how they're going to put their head on a pillow at night, or how they're going to get that next meal. Or many times, especially with traffickers, they get them drug addicted and they're not functioning. Nobody's, and where are they running to since there's such a lack of resources or housing for this type of thing? How do you respond to somebody like that? Because I want to get a little tougher about it because I'm really, well, I'm a little, I don't want to lose my cool, but I'm a little tired of that because it's very simple. Like if you don't have money, if you don't have a job, if you don't have a roof over your, like, where are you going?
Absolutely. And, I think that's why when I spoke at Sanctuary for Families Benefit, a big part of my speech was, my biggest flex is I got all my higher education after I left my abuser. I had nothing. And here I am today, PhD student. And, that is how much this could rob you of everything you have. And, anyone that says, why don't you just leave or do this or that? Do you want to go up to Path in the Bronx to go to that family shelter with your kids? Think about that. With all these, there's various, dangerous people there. Let's not sugarcoat this. There's no hotel. There's no nice place. Shelters are like jails. I've been in a domestic violence shelter myself. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And I had to live like I was in jail with a curfew. I had to ask for permission to go to my, I worked as a tech at New York Presbyterian Hospital at the time, serving the community. And I had to ask for permission to leave to go work my shift. And I had been a victim of a violent assault. And that's how I was treated. So, that is the reality. That's my personal story that I can speak on, that I experienced. And, I'm afraid that that's what it comes down to. And we need to improve resources so that they're more, they're re-traumatizing a lot of the systems that survivors go through once they reach the help, unfortunately. So we need, and this is where my survivor leadership that I love, which is that lived experience, reinvesting that into systems and organizations that are designed to help survivors. This is where that comes in, to allow that experience to be better for someone. So that makes it easier for someone to make that call of, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to that shelter. I'm going to go there. I know I'm not going to be in this scary place like a jail. Yeah. So it's a little bit of why.
Something we're constantly preaching about, especially behind the scenes here at the Warriors: resources for housing, resources for safe housing, spaces to go, just a safe space, even if it's for 2 or 3 days, a safe space where somebody can collect their thoughts, and just rest. I always say, like, put their head on a pillow, because that's what a lot of girls and women in particular say to me. I would just want to put my head on a pillow and rest for a little bit with nobody bothering me. Tell us about your job at Sanctuary for Families. It's a wonderful organization. They were serving thousands of people a year here in New York. Tell us what you do specifically, and touch upon, you come into contact with families, or you do individual, do you do children? Tell us about everything you're doing.
Sure. So my role at Sanctuary for Families is survivor leader, and that firmly is a role of an advocate. I do have, my professional role as a therapist. I do that in a private practice, and let me explain why. So I'm a former client of Sanctuary. That is how I became a survivor leader. I had legal services from them. I wasn't in one of their domestic violence shelters. I had clinical services, therapeutic services. I went through criminal court systems as a witness in a criminal case. They held my hand through family court when I went through that. Child services were involved. They held my hand through that when I was involved with that as a non-respondent. So now I pay that forward, and I go to various events around the city. Mainly, I'm always on the ground. We're outside, and we're talking to the people of this city about, these are the services that we offer. We're also talking to people of this city about, this is what gender-based violence is. These are the various things that come with it. I find myself talking to people a lot about the psychological and the emotional abuse. Again, I think that can be very damaging. It can be very confusing for people and cause the most shame a lot of the time as well. Why am I in this situation? Or, somehow it was my fault. And, I'm basically trying to get people to ride this train with us of survivor leadership and bring it into their organizations too. That's a big piece of what I'm trying to cultivate, survivor leadership culture, to make a dent on this oppressive system that we are dealing with. It. We know it needs bulldozing and rebuilt. Well, we can't have that ideal scenario, but we can make a dent in it. I'm encouraging, workplaces, anyone who's responding to adopt this culture and utilize survivors, respect them, compensate them for their expertise, bring them on board, bring them to the table next to you. There's nobody like a survivor to help you be more aware and more self-aware, turning that focus onto the provider. Sorry, I'm on a soapbox here. I absolutely love this.
No.
Subject.
I
love it.
I'll tell you why I want to talk about it, because, I just came to this whole thing. My whole background is in entertainment, music business out of college and straight through like producing on Broadway and all that. And I had this client who wrote a book about domestic violence, because I also did PR and marketing over the years. And in her book she was writing about domestic violence, I was like, well, it intersects all the research, with human trafficking. This is only about 5 years ago. That's it. And I literally sat up and said, this cannot be allowed. I'm becoming a warrior, a word I assure you I have never used in my entire life. It just came out of me. Okay. So fast forward, COVID came, just to give you a little background about me. And I'm like, perfect opportunity to form a nonprofit. Let's be legitimate. And of course, nobody was working during a whole year at the IRS to do everything. But I immersed myself in just connecting to people or so-called experts, trying to talk about it, tweet about it, find stories, just to raise awareness this is happening. I still get, being in the middle of New York City, I do a lot of speeches and focus groups. I get that doesn't happen here. That's what I get, Jessica. It happens in every town, city, and rural area across America, not to mention the globe, So those are the kind of things we have to step it back and just raise the awareness. Now, as far as survivors, so when I started this, now I'm on a soapbox, but I would go, it was right before COVID. I was going to Washington. I was invited to things, and I would see survivors. This is my opinion. This is what we call it in the entertainment business, the dog and pony show. They'd kind of be brought out. Here's a survivor. It was like, to me, it was such a weird thing, because even then, not knowing what I know now, 5 years later, I thought, oh, you're sticking these people out there, these girls and women, and occasionally a man, and it's kind of like a look at me. It was like a weird thing to me. I'm like, oh, that should kind of be like very private, or that should be somebody who's really ready to do that. And it was kind of like the audience. How am I explaining this? And I think you know what I mean. Looking at these people, it was weird to me. And I thought, and then I heard, everybody's like always trying to like, okay, we need gift cards for our survivors. I'm like, gift cards? You don't pay organizations their travel, or that's not everybody, but for the most part. And then I started working behind the scenes with survivors. And so at the Warriors, we would pay privately for their groceries or for their co-pays or their transportation. But I was like in shock with all these organizations, and they seem to be growing. Like, why aren't those survivors? We need their voices. We need their experiences to formulate like a cohesive plan going. Why aren't they taken care of? That's me thinking, I want to give somebody a gift card to Target. I mean, really? I mean, it's nice. You know what I mean? But so I do. I was shocked, Jessica. I was really shocked about all that.
Yeah, well, it's really the victim narrative, isn't it? And using that. And I can see why, in a way, yes, the public at large, they need to know about some of the atrocious things that go on, maybe to put some money behind this. I sort of get that piece, but it's also with, organizations, especially responding to forms of gender-based violence. They need to know how strong that we are, the survivors, because they tend to see us when we're in that, going through the fire, when we're at our weakest. Our PTSD symptoms are not managed yet. Chaos is our home. We're, we don't have clarity of thought. And, we are a lot more than that. And I think as in addition to being financially compensated, we really want the respect, the credit for our expertise. And, because we are experts at playing the long game. We have so many skills, the skills that I use every day in my work, that I lean on heavily when I do my work that comes under my licensure, my credentials, that, it's my lived experience that helps me hold those clients a lot. It's my lived experience that helps me get that vital therapeutic rapport on fast forward with someone, and that is what determines success in therapy, for example, having that. So it's so precious to harness that. And I'm hoping that organizations will get on board and also look inwards at themselves and see how they're coming in with biases. I know that when I worked at New York Presbyterian Hospital, I worked in the children's hospital a long time. I saw human trafficking there in children, and when I, from a professional standpoint on the other side. And, I know for a fact the training is not there. We didn't do any training on that. We made it up as we went along a lot of the time, in terms of response to it. And that's one of the things that, in addition to my personal story, turned me on to, I want to be a therapist. I want to get into this. I want to be that responder that is better equipped,
You mentioned a couple of things. First of all, June is PT, post-traumatic stress disorder month is June. Of course, it needs to be every month, but okay, we'll focus on it for June and talk about it. I'm glad you brought that up, because only recently I'm seeing more stories when I dig around that human trafficking, survivor, domestic violence, any of this exploitation, okay? It could be labor trafficking, psychological, whatever, that is a form of it. And also, I want to mention about, and I want to introduce you to them, two dear friends of mine, two nurses, started Nurses United Against Human Trafficking. And these two women they started this because although everybody will tell you in the healthcare system, sure, we had human trafficking training, we checked a box, we watched a 15-minute video, somebody came in and spoke to us that was like doing a PowerPoint, all the boring things. I can't think of a worse thing, I'm sorry, than a PowerPoint. Okay. Like, it's like, please relate to each other, talk about it. Okay. Bring in a Jessica to talk about it, not a PowerPoint that's done. Okay. So anyway, they started Nurses United Against Human Trafficking, and they did a wonderful, two women did what our government could not do. And this came out a little over a year ago. I'm going to send you everything. They put out an anonymous poll across the country, and they were able to get responses from 48 states from nurses, okay, nurses in training, nurses, and it was 99% of them, it was like 98.9 or some weird number, responded they did not have adequate training to deal with a human trafficking victim, or that pimp or trafficker standing in the waiting room. And the girl, for instance, as an example, said, that's my brother, that's my uncle, what to do. There was no full circle kind of, liaison here. And they started this organization, which is a wonderful thing. So I'm connecting you with them because we have to get that kind of thing out there, the healing process, the what are we doing to stop it kind of thing, instead of just putting, as I say, the Band-Aid. I'm sick of the Band-Aids, Jessica.
Absolutely. And it costs money too. This is cost effective. These survivor leadership measures, those nurses sound just absolutely fantastic. That makes me really happy to hear. And I look forward to learning more about that, because it's absolutely, it's beyond necessary. And that's also where culturally specific services come into. I talked about survivor leadership, and that's survivor expertise, but also cultural expertise is another phrase I like to throw around. And it's, our cultural identities are very complex. They go far beyond race, country of origin, gender. They're very nuanced, but it's kind of basically taking that expertise and applying it into response and prevention as well. At hospitals, we need, and various places, we need to harness that. I know working at New York Presbyterian, our clientele are mostly Hispanic. and in the ER, actually not in the inpatient, but certainly in the ERs. And, it's things like that, making sure that we have people ready to respond and recognize and interpret things, not just language, but body language, for example, different things, seeing and being
Right.
equipped. Yeah.
Yes. The indicators, and I don't buy that argument. I know it's hard to raise monies, find monies, this, that, and the other thing. I never buy that argument though, because I maintain there's a lot of money out there for certain things and not a lot of money out there for other things. So organizations have to work, because I hear that a lot. We can't do it. We don't have the money. Can't do it. We don't have the man or woman power. I said manpower the other day and somebody corrected me. I didn't mean it. Manpower, woman power, whatever the power.
Yeah.
But we have to focus more on whether it's our elected representatives getting funding, and not just the traditional, because I do a lot of work in Albany, our state capital, and also in Washington, check off the boxes. Like there has to be new thinking, housing, funding for these organizations, funding for survivors to expand, treat, and cultivate new survivor leaders so we can really get a grip on all of this.
Absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah,
that now,
absolutely.
let me ask you about that. What do you think? Answer any way you see fit. So I live by a family hotel of immigrants, and I'm very upset, Jessica, because doormen who work in all the apartment buildings across reported to me, because I know them. Like these are mothers, because I see them during the day with small children going to school and the market, that cars are lining up at night, and these women, primarily young women I'm seeing, are going and having sex in the cars out on 57th Street by me. I don't know if it's their boyfriends, husbands, or the debt bondage. Like, what are we doing about? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because these poor women, so we bring these women here, these girls here, and we're allowing this. I'm having a really hard problem with this. We don't take care of
Yeah.
our own, and we're not taking care of these women. I think women should be out in the streets screaming about this.
Yeah, I mean, that is where the survivor leadership and the cultural expertise should be invested in whoever's, running these shelters. You need that there to help recognize and interpret what's going on. Because what comes to mind with that to me is it could be two scenarios. I know from my own personal experience of having to live in a shelter, you have these curfews, you can't have visitors, it's like jail. So is it, these sex and car, could it be some type of way that someone's able to meet up with their boyfriend or whoever, who may be in a male shelter elsewhere? I don't know. Could it be the commercial sale of sex? Possibly yes too, because I am going to hazard a guess, because I don't think survivor leadership has been well cultivated in this city yet, that they don't have experts in human trafficking, in sex trafficking on the ground in these shelters. I don't think they've had training. So how they're going to recognize it in the early stages, how they're going to recognize, for me, as soon as I see a migrant, I automatically think, I get protective, hi, and I try to be friends, because it's great to meet new people. But I also think, what do you, how are you going to make money? What's going on? We know there's supposedly all these handouts, but it's, not necessarily as easy to get, money when you come to this city as people might think. So how are you going to do that? Who's going to come and prey on you? We don't know. So, it's very important to have experts on the ground to help respond and interpret. And, as far as I know, these shelters are not, they're just run by whoever right now. I mean, I couldn't tell you.
No, I just wanted to, whatever you wanted to share about that, because I'm so upset in knowing these are mothers, they're young women, they must be overwhelming to come here. I always say to people, I'd be coming here too with my kids to have a better life. So we have to always remember that, like break it apart, anything political.
Absolutely.
And now that I'm hearing this, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, these young women are out in cars, and you think there would have been a piece with all these different shelters and havens, whatever they're calling them, where this piece would have been in there to deal directly. Because I, again, don't have proof, but I don't think there's any mechanism like in these places actually to deal with these women. So I'm very frightened for like All women and girls.
Yeah. Well, I know as well that even though, this talk of, you get so much money on a debit card if you come here, this and that. I know I can speak to my personal story. As an abused woman, I was not eligible. I got zero from Victim Services, New York. These are things that people wouldn't believe. I wasn't eligible for whatever reason. My abuser went to jail on felony charges, not eligible for that. I didn't get a housing voucher. I had to dig my way out of it myself, right? I remember the DA saying to me, "Oh, we'll send you in a hotel." There is no hotel.
Right.
I mean, this is a few years ago, but even today, it always makes me question, and anything, especially things like the sale of sex, it usually comes from desperation. That's why we have that phrase now that we say, sex workers work. Those of us that are with, I know you're with it, the equality model, we're not with it. We say it's not. It's usually not it's consensual in inverted commas, but it's not, because it's coming from desperation. So whatever's going on, we need experts on the ground that understand this complex dynamics at play that make people possibly desperate to do things.
Well, that's what it is. The desperation is so real and there. And that's what I'm actually seeing, whether I walk past, the Port Authority and 42nd and 8th, I can be like, that guy's waiting for somebody vulnerable. That guy in front of Covenant House is waiting for somebody vulnerable. I totally lied to you. I said 30 minutes to you, but I have to keep you a couple extra minutes, Jessica.
Okay.
What do you think are you familiar with what's going on with the UN, this dramatic turnaround of this most recent report where this special rapporteur, this woman, said exactly that sex work, I'll break it down, is inherently harmful. Sex is not work. Today they're debating at the UN, sex work is work. But it was a stunning departure because the UN has traditionally sex work is work type of thing from all their different studies, which I found very upsetting, saying women are vulnerable, they have no choice. Whereas we always thought we have to create choices for them and help them if they want the help. But it was very stunning towards the end of last week that this was put out there on behalf of the UN that we need to get into more therapies. We need to get into helping women and girls, especially not only in the United States, but around the globe. Sex work is not work. I was shocked it happened. It's good news, but we want the equality model. You have any thoughts on it? Did you hear anything?
I not that, but that's interesting to me that that they were actually debating in the UN of all places if sex work is work or not. I mean, I'm with the equality model. Sex work is not work. It is, it comes from a place of desperation. There is no real consent possible when there, in my opinion, when someone is desperate. That's why we follow, anyone who's listening, please look up the equality model if you want to understand that better without getting too deep into it. I think that, as someone who is doing research myself as a doctoral student, I'm really happy that I'm a survivor who's designing research. And that makes me think about the data out there, the people, who are the people at the UN who are doing this. This is why you need survivor leadership culture in every organization.
Yes.
And I don't think they possibly don't have it. My observation of their organization is they are, I think there's probably some great biases going around there, and there's nothing like a survivor leader to bring out the, I can't think of a better way of saying it, but to bring out a sense of your own self. What do you bring into the room? Because if they're debating that, they really have no idea what's going on in the lay of the land, what's going on outside. You're out of touch. You have no idea. And so where are you pulling, who are your informational sources if you're actually debating if sex work is work or not?
Well, I agree. And I stopped a couple of years ago. I used to go to a lot of things at the UN. I'd be invited, human trafficking things. And then one day I'm like, I can't go there anymore. It's like a photo op and there's no work being done. But no, the point about this is it's actually good that this woman who works at the UN is telling them now, this is not acceptable what you're doing at the UN. I want to bring you the facts and the statistics and the reality about sex work. She's fighting it. So maybe they'll fire her. I don't know, but she's like, I was shocked they're even allowing this. We'll leave that for another program, kind of thing. Finish up. What do you need? What do you need from the public? How can they help you? What's on your, horizon for the immediate future? Because we want to help you. We want to stay in touch. And one thing about
Yes.
the equality model, Sanctuary for Families, Lynn's Warriors, were all part of a coalition called New Yorkers for the Equality Model. So I will, equalitymodelnewyork.org is the website. I'll have all this in the body of the video. I put all the information in there.
Beautiful.
We want to help people, not
Yeah.
help the pimps and traffickers. I'll leave it at that. But
Yes.
Jessica, what can we do to help you? We want to help you
Um,
build, get ahead.
yes.
Obviously, monies, clients, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Stand with survivors, please. And when I say stand with survivors, it means, not only believe us, but also stand with us, know that we are so skilled, so strong. Help us spread this survivor leadership culture where we reinvest the lived experience in the re-traumatizing systems that are designed to help. If you care about oppressive forces, which we all do, regardless of where we stand politically, I really believe we all do, then please, get behind this, get behind organizations like Sanctuary for Families, who are really doing the real work. We have so many people on Instagram, like they got these men who were former narcissistic abusers, and they have 500,000 followers, educating people about this is what abuse is and this and that. Please watch what you're following. We've got the Sanctuary for Families. I think they've got about 3,000 followers right now. We are the leading legal service provider in the country for gender-based violence survivors. Think about that. Please get behind us, whether it's following us on things like Instagram. Let's spread the awareness of the people doing the real work out there, like us.
You and Sanctuary are called boots on the ground, people doing the real work.
Yeah.
And we cannot, Jessica, don't get me started, get sucked up in this whole internet thing, because, I'll have 600 followers with all these good studies and information because I want people to share it or just read it. And then I'll see somebody make a total lie up. They'll say, I don't know, there's somebody, I don't even know who they are. They'll get 12,000 impressions or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. And I'm like, it's all fake. I got to remind myself it's fake. Kind of, no, we're going to have all the information about you and Sanctuary in the body. Also the equality model. It's very important. That is something else I find people everywhere I go in New York State, and I say, do you know about this? Nobody seems to know about this push for all of this sex work. So Jessica, final words, anything you want to leave us with besides what you just said, which was beautiful.
Stand with survivors. During this time, as we get, we're leading up to these elections. Let's not be divided. Like, we're strong. Let's get together on this fight against gender-based violence. Let's remember that we're it's humans involved, and wherever we're coming from, that in the beauty of work as a survivor leader that I've made friends through this is that when I meet another survivor, we can be so different, yet we can be so similar with our stories, and let's remember that piece, that it really can affect anybody, any socioeconomic status, any race, country of origin, immigrant state. It affects all of us, so let's remember this, and let's get behind standing with survivors, please.
Listening and standing with survivors. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you for spending time with us. I want to thank you for bravely sharing your story. Definitely thanking you for all the work you do, using your voice that I know resonates, because I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but I need to showcase such as you, Jessica.
Really.
We have to. You want to speak about it. You have the expertise. You have the studies. That's another thing. Studies are usually so old. When I look things up and I see studies from before COVID, and I'm like, no, that doesn't hold at all anymore. I can't use any of that. Why don't we have more? We fight for that in Congress, updated studies. It's always, we don't have enough money. We got to find the money. I'm going to urge everybody to follow Sanctuary for Families. Also, I'll have all of your office information your
Yes.
information, that they can follow you also on Instagram. And I want you to get on that X. I want you to get on that Twitter and put out
Yes.
your little niblets every day of information that people can retweet or learn by. You must do that. And also
Yes.
you're on Instagram. I just want to say to you, Jessica, you're a warrior. I mean that truly. I'm so glad we've connected, and I thank you
Me
for
too.
sharing. And
Yeah.
this video is going to help a lot of people. I'm going to be showing it to actually a lot of survivors also. So
Fantastic.
thank you. I want to speak again soon. We need to speak more frequently so we can keep getting the
Yeah,
information, because information is
absolutely.
changing so rapidly, it's
Yes, it
just
does.
piling up. And I don't feel like, we know mainstream media does not like to cover, you know, a lot of what I call the nuts and bolts of what really boots on the ground. They don't want to cover that. They want to cover what they deem like sexy or something,
Yeah,
but this is the information, Jessica.
absolutely.
You are the real deal. Thank you for joining us today. Let us speak again soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Lynn.